Come on, you can do it. Give me an image. Hey guys, welcome back to Orchids. Thanks for checking in. Actually, there's another thing. Today we're gonna do a little photo shoot. It's good. Very quick rundown of some equipment that we use. Of course, though, you could just take some pictures on your cell phone. A few caveats, like before we kind of get into the whole thing. Of course, this is just our method or my method of taking photographs, like how I like them to look stylistically and what I'm trying to do. My method, of course, is not going to apply for everybody, but I shoot in macro. And so if you want to shoot macro on a cell phone, there are little like connector things that you can put over, I believe, like most regular phone cameras. Anyway, you can shoot macro, but I've never used those, so I don't know how good they are, like even which ones to recommend. So yeah, anything that we use or recommend is just like, again, what I use. It's not like any paid subscriptions or, anything like, or whatever, paid advertisements, I guess. So let's delve right into it today, just what we're going to be using. First thing, of course, is a camera. So I just have a Nikon DSLR that the boss got me as a gift a couple years ago. And so this is my main photography tool now, and I love this thing. And yeah, it is Nikon, but whatever. If you're a Canon, it doesn't matter. In my opinion, I don't really care that much. Anyways, so yeah, one thing I do care a lot about is this lens, and I am a huge fan of this company. I guess I could turn it so it actually reads right up. There you go. So this company makes these kind of interesting artistic like lenses, and they have some cool effects that are built into the lenses. And I really love, this is my favorite lens for this. This is basically one of the only lenses that's ever on this camera. I use this thing for so many different projects and just different approaches. This lens does, and I won't go way into it, but if you're curious about photography stuff and into it, you want to get a new piece of equipment, try this. This is a macro lens, as you can see, so it does magnify the image. So it is a 1:2 macro. So the thing about macro is you can get very close to the flower, and it like zooms in to make the image larger than it is in real life. And yeah, this particular lens, if you open the aperture like all the way up, and yeah, I won't get into that, but you can see down here 1.6. So that's as big as the lens will get, if you will. And on this setting, the images are like glossy looking. I'll show you an example. So the images look like this. You can see that it just gives the images a cool glossy appearance. So it's really fun thing to try out and use in different things. Some of the other equipment that I use, the boss also got me this a few years ago. This is why this bag was cool. It comes with these nice clips. So the top bar here that holds my black drop cloth on, it collapses in the middle. It just pops apart. So this whole thing collapses. Got a couple tripods, and yeah, this was an aftermarket. I say aftermarket. I bought this at like a cloth shop, because the one that came with it, the black one, is like a matte, like a flat kind of papery texture, and it reflects a lot of light. So it wasn't given the results that I wanted. So this is like just a felt, kind of material that it diffuses light a lot more. So the backgrounds just come out smoother and more black. Photo studio in a bag, essentially. There's so many things in there that I don't even use, like floodlights and fill lights and like timer, like it can do everything. But also the ring light can live in there, so that came in this kit as well. And so that is what I use as my pretty much only light when I photograph orchids. That is just the way I do it and how I like to accent the plants and have the lighting set up. There's so many different options. Like I do have in here LED strip. I don't know. I just use it for various applications sometimes. I don't know, some weird accent lighting, then those are kind of fun to play with. But that's about all I use for lighting. And I try to take my pictures in the dark, like at night or early morning, just so I can control the lighting, absolutely, like just for what I want. And then, of course, I use a tripod for the camera. So that is a nice. All of these things are just like budget gear. Nothing is like extremely expensive. I mean, the camera now, I think they've discontinued DSLRs and they're like mirrorless now. I don't even know. Anyway, and yeah, I will be photo stacking, like doing a focus stacking. That's how I take pictures of these orchids, and so I do need the computer with Photoshop. All I use it for is to stack the images. So you'll see how I take the photos here in a second. Oh yeah, and we also need the plant. So yeah, this is what we're gonna photograph tonight. You can get like a nice cell phone image, right? Try to take one straightforward picture showing as much detail of the flower or the plant as possible. And then I also try to do something creative, like look at the flower that I'm gonna shoot and pick out a unique feature. Like from this angle, you can see the little fangs on the end of the lip. And that's something that when I set up and choose exactly which angle I'm going to photograph this from, I want to emphasize those fangs. And of course, like the white outline on the flowers that just emphasizes itself. So I don't need to do much on that except make sure that they're defined, right? So it pays to kind of look at the flower for a minute, think about it and kind of what you want to do with the picture. I mean, you can do this out in the wild too. That's the other thing. I shoot all indoors, which the orchids are great for that because they live, all of ours are like pretty much indoor orchids. So they're just here all the time and I can just take one and move it over and get set up with the little table and my backdrop and go to town. So it's nice. When you're outdoor photography, that's a whole different like master thesis course. I mean, that's a different animal. So anyway, let's get right to it. All right, so now we're back. I've got everything set up. It's actually the next morning after I filmed the little intro gear rundown. So I got to be a little bit quiet because the boss is still asleep in the other room. So yeah, I like to shoot in the dark. Right now I have the room light on, just kind of to show the setup and what I do usually. Yeah, I'll shut that main light off, just using the ring light once I actually get going. So I'll show you the settings on the camera and what I shoot with. And try to get some different approaches to this particular flower. First up, a couple things to mention. The deal about focus stacking is, especially when shooting in macro or like close up, depending on your settings, your depth of field, this thing that photographers always talk about in depth of field. The front of the plant here will be in focus and maybe a thin slice through the flower will be in focus. And the rest of the flower going back will be out of focus. So what you do is you take a picture in focus here and then change the focus to back here and then take another picture back here and another one and another one. And then you throw those into Photoshop and it will focus stack. So it will take the in-focus parts of all those images and make one composite image. While I don't use any artificial intelligence, I think we all do because that's all controlled by, their really good AI program. which is why Photoshop is so great. I try to get my color settings pretty true right away, so I don't do much, if any, on most of the photographs, any color processing in Photoshop. I just do focus stacking primarily. Some other things that I do depending on the flower, so I thought I'd mention them really quickly, is I will use a UV filter on some flowers, especially if they're like a waxy, glossy texture flower. I try to use a UV filter. Now that's tough if you have a really big like focus throw, meaning you're turning the lens a lot to get focus, because they work with like lines. So of course there's going to be some reflectance as the lines go around. Anyway, I don't want to nerd out too much on that, but yeah, it's a bit trickier to do, but you can cut down on some reflection if you apply a UV filter, I've found, but again, that takes more work. I like to keep it simple if possible. So I'm not using it on this particular flower because it's, yeah, once I got the light, I'll bring the camera up here and I'll show you, but yeah, it's got this like kind of weird velvet blush when I get the ring light right on it that is not really apparent under normal everyday light. So that's kind of cool. So I kind of want that to show up, if possible, when I take the picture. On the camera itself, here is my settings panel. So I try to shoot, you know, as low ISO as possible, just to cut down on grain. And then I shoot, well, for, you know, some more artistic images, I will shoot at a faster, so I'll usually go up around 100 or something, or 200. And then I just crank the aperture open to get that glossy artistic effect. Like, so you can see this, you know, this image is just one that I took here this morning in the photo shoot, and that was at 1.6 all the way open with a 200, like, I don't know if it's even in focus, but so that's the kind of image, kind of texture that you get. And now that I just cranked everything, it wasn't set up for that. But anyway, the other important thing, which maybe you heard it when it clicked, but if you're gonna do a lot of this kind of stuff, you want to go into your menu, timers. This is on a Nikon, obviously yours, but the exposure delay mode is really critical. So if you aren't familiar with this, what this does, and many cameras, like even like cheaper ones, will have this option. When you click the button, it won't take the picture immediately. So I think this is set for like half a second delay, and you can customize it to be even longer if you want before it takes the picture. So that way any vibrations from your finger of pushing the button, or like I shouldn't have the strap on the camera when I'm doing this kind of work, because yeah, it vibrates and shakes like and so any shaking at this kind of close-up macro long exposure type work is going to make for fuzzy images. So these are just simple things to do in your camera when you're doing, if you want to try this kind of photography. Back into the images. Again, I set my white balance just to be auto because I find that to be the best, and I will, you know, review the images just on my LCD here when I take them, just to make sure that everything's fine. But I try to adjust that, so again, I don't have to do any touch-up work or color adjustment. That's just a whole other headache, and I don't like doing that kind of stuff. Ooh, look at it, yeah. You see it? There it is. For this image, I just want to get, you know, the main detail and show as much of the entire bloom as I can. What I typically like to do is start at the back of so all the way to the back with my focus, and start with those. And then I'm going to crank it down. I'm going to do like I'm going to do half a second or so to start. We'll see what that kind of looks at 125. Oh, I forgot. I got to crank. So this is, the aperture is f11 for this just anyone, photography, who's kind of... Another trick when you're focus stacking is to, once you get your starting image and you know where you want to start in the stack, just hold your finger up and take a quick snapshot. So when you're reviewing, you know, like, okay, this next image is the first one I want to stack. Like when you get taken a bunch, you're like, which one was it? And, oh yeah, and try not to move too much around after, like when it's taking the image. You want to limit your movement and any vibrations. But then every time I will just turn the lens to change and bring the focus forward on every image. Actually, I forgot to turn the room light off. See, you gotta start over again, hold on. Am I still recording? So now I've got my light how I want it. I just want the ring light. Okay, so I wanna start at the back. So here again, I'm gonna start over. I've got focus now, the back of the flower. And again, I try to choose landmarks as I go through the stack of the flowers. And I just turn it a couple millimeters and watch as I, you know, like I see certain fangs like I talked about. I want to emphasize those. And so I see certain ones through the clump of flowers that I really want to hit with the focus and make sure that, you know, they'll come out crystal clear. Like you'll see in the final image here on the left, there's like a set of fangs there that I really want to get nailed. Now it's tricky. I don't know how this one's going to come out in the end, because when you're doing a very deep stack of flowers, you need to be a lot more precise than I am manually. Now that's kind of, let's say, a drawback of these lens baby lenses, at least this one. It's not autofocus, so it's a manual lens, which means you have to turn it by hand. If you have an autofocus macro, there's like programs, you can program your camera to just take like a certain number of images, and you can set exactly how much it changes every time, adjust the focus. So you can do this, and there's like slider bar things for the camera to... Anyway, this is the manual way. And yes, it's not as precise, but I don't know. It's a cheap way to do it without a lot of gear. And hopefully the image comes out good in the end. It's always an experiment. Like sometimes I think I'm going to get a great one, and then it turns out bad, and the computer can't really like fill all of the, you know, it gets really tricky with deep flowers like this. So we'll see. Again, look for those landmarks in the image that you really want. All right, and then yeah. Just take an end photo, so you say, okay, in between these two images, these are the ones that I want to stack. All right, so that's the whole process. Now that was, I don't know, maybe 15 images, 20 images. But yeah, so then we'll throw them into Photoshop, and we'll see how they stack up. We'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I've opened up the Photoshop. If you've never done focus stacking, what you do is you open a script, and then one of the options should be load files into stack. So you just want to open a stack of images, and then you can browse and select them. So these were the images. And so now you can tell why, like you do the finger in front of the lens to get your, your range of images, like a nice start-stop point. So I'm going to import all of those images into a stack. I know, this is so old school. Sorry, I don't know how to screen record on this old machine anyway, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that ended up being, for this stack, a little over 30 images or so. Yeah, and it may not be able to crunch all of these. It just depends. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to select all my images again down in the right bottom. So now all of the layers are highlighted. And then you're going to do, I always just do the super easy one in Edit. And then first you want to align the layers. So go Auto Align. I just select the auto option. And there's so many different ways to align these and get them stacked up right, but the auto align does good. Sometimes I'll do it twice. I don't know why, if that makes any difference. All right, so now it's done the auto layer, auto align. Now just go to auto blend, and that will bring up the option. Yes, you can see it starts to get not happy through this process. Stack, so you want to do the stack image option. Hit OK and wait 5 minutes later. We are almost there. It's just generating the fill. So the fill is like in between, like where it trims out parts that were out of focus. It has to generate some fill in between from parts of the other images. Is, the basic algorithm deal, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a programmer. Let's see what this turns out like. Okay, well, there it is. So you can see it as it spits out on the computer. And so now what I was saying, I'll show you the image. So yeah, as you can see, it's not exactly perfect, but I like I like the emphasis on the fangs, and it does show a lot of the detail, and the entire bunch of flowers, the whole inflorescence is more or less in focus. Only a couple minor spots that, like, the computer didn't do great, and compositionally, I wish I would have shown like the fangs on the right hand, the flower that's off on its own. Those I didn't get like I was hoping. But anyway, so there you go. Thanks for checking in and joining us on a little photo shoot today. Here you go, editing video. So anyway, thanks guys. We hope you're having a good one, and we will see you back here at El Pilar soon.